We're going to wait a few minutes for everybody to join, and then we'll get started. All right, a couple more minutes, see if anybody else jumps on. I know I sent out a text earlier, so hopefully they do.
Ms. Hill, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Since I was not able to do the activity yesterday, how should I complete the slides?
Okay. Use Ethan's data.
Yes, ma'am.
Give people about 2 more minutes, and then we'll get started. All right. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Crowd's kind of slim, but thank y'all for joining. So let's go back to the do now engage questions. Yesterday, I told you that I wasn't going to tell you if your answers were right or wrong, but just to spit out some answers for me. So somebody tell me what part of nature that we all share, something that they wrote down.
Air.
Yeah, I can consider that part of nature. Okay, what else?
I said food.
Food, so maybe like wildlife kind of thing, like fish, deer.
Water.
I like that. Think about nature as in if maybe you were going on a hike at a public park. There are public lands that maybe we all share. Wait on the bell. Where do you go fishing? That's nature.
Lakes and ponds in the ocean.
Yes, lakes, ponds, oceans, anything like that. I mean, obviously, Caddo Lake's not privately owned. You can go out there. That's something that we all share. Now, looking at parts of the community that we all share, let's think locally here. So what are some things that within a few miles of us we share right here?
Grocery stores.
Okay, yeah, we do go to the same grocery stores. Let's think about along the lines of things that aren't privately owned.
Libraries.
Park.
Yes. Anything else? Think back to
Schools.
our,
Schools.
schools, yes. Let's go back to our nature part. What are some local parts of the community that have to do with nature that we share around us? Parks, yes, I like that, Kara. So public parks. Where would you fish at locally that's public?
Caddo Lake or like Black Bayou.
Yes, Caddo Lake, Black Bayou, Red River. Those are also local community things that we share. So those examples are good for your do now. And then we will scroll down. You should all have at least your group members' data. If you still have to add up and finish some of the math, that is okay. But when you submit them, make sure that you have each of your group members' names on your table so that I can determine who is the winner from each village and I can get you your points appropriately. And sorry guys, I did realize that I forgot to give you your treat at the end of class, so I promise on Monday you will have your treats. They are here, I just have to give them to you. All right, and then for number one, that was just describing what your group's ocean looked like after the first and third round. I know some tables after the first round, what did you do to all your fish? What happened to like Madeline and Ethan's table, or wait, was that? No, Ethan's table somewhere. What'd y'all do to your fish?
We took all them out the pond. Like
Yep.
we caught all them.
For the first round, you overfished. You didn't have any left. And then tell me what happened after your third round. Those are kind of individual group answers. I don't necessarily know what everyone's looked like. Number two, again, is according to yourself or your group members. So just what was your strategy? Did other people in your group, did y'all work together and form a strategy? I know Jolie and Anya, y'all's group had a great unified strategy. So just tell me that on number two. And then if you made rules, same thing with that back table with Anya. Y'all had some rules or some guidelines that y'all used to fish each year. So put those there. If your group didn't make any, that's okay, but tell me maybe what rules you could have made to protect your fish population and to maximize the profit for each one of your group members. So be specific there. Tell me some rules and regulations that you would have made. And then for number 4, what kind of rules would you make if you were a policymaker at the Fish and Wildlife Service in the U.S. in charge of making sure the fishing industry doesn't run out of crabs, fish, or lobster? So think about numbers, sizes, and females. Somebody give me an example of a rule that you would make to protect our fishing industry.
Like-
I would make it to where you can only keep a certain amount of fish, so then overfishing doesn't happen.
Okay, so we're gonna have regulations on the amount you can keep. What else?
Like you can only catch one female for a male.
Okay,
Keep the
So-
males and females equal.
I like that idea a lot. So keep your sex ratio balanced. Only catch so many of each sex. I like that a lot. Somebody else give me something.
You can like only catch like adult fish, so the babies can grow and stuff and
Good.
reproduce.
Size, age limits. Any other ideas?
Regulations on like what species of fish you could keep, depending on how many are thriving out of that species.
Good. I like that. Species regulations. Any other ideas? These are all really good. Those would be great on number 4. If you think of other things, just jot them down right there. Because remember, these are rules that you would make. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something that is already a rule, just anything that you would make to protect our fishing industry. And then number 5, you were going to discuss with your group, or we can discuss it right here. What are some other shared resources besides ocean fish that would face the same issues?
Like deer and birds.
Deer and birds. Very good. So do we have rules and regulations on deer hunting?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we do. What are some of those?
We have seasons that you can hunt deer.
Yes, so only certain times you can hunt them. Anything else that we have to do with deer?
You can only have like a limit. You can't just kill however many deer you want in a season. You have a limit to kill in a season.
Yes, you have a limit, so you've got to tag your deer to make sure that you're not going over that limit. Do we have any sex regulations on deer?
You can't kill you can't kill baby deer like the doe. You can't kill doe and like the baby.
Okay. And then in certain areas of Louisiana, if you look up some of the hunting and fishing regulations for Louisiana, they have seasons that are specific for, this is maybe a doe season. You can only shoot a doe during these days, and then only certain seasons for bucks. So the Wildlife and Fisheries does a really good job of keeping up with the local populations in areas. And so they even make specific rules for different parishes to make sure that the populations are healthy in those areas. So any other ideas besides deer that face these issues? Ethan, you said another one, I think. What was it?
Birds.
Birds. What are some regulations we have on birds?
With ducks, you can't bait them with corn.
Okay, that's a good one. So they even have regulations on what you can use to lure them in. Any other ideas on what we have to do with birds? Can you go out and kill a bald eagle?
No, ma'am.
No, you can't. You get in a lot of trouble for that. So we have regulations there too. Can you kill as many birds as you want?
No.
No, we have regulations for certain species on how many you can kill. All right, and then somebody give me one more idea besides deer and birds.
Plants.
Plants. I do like that. Okay. Give me where you're going on that.
Well, never mind. That wouldn't be a good one.
I feel like you could make it work depending on where your thought process is.
For plants, one of the examples could be the giant salvinia that's in the lakes. They try to regulate that as much as possible.
Okay, so I really like where we're going with this discussion, because when we were talking about deer, birds, and fish, we're talking about not trying to get rid of them. We're trying to save them and keep the numbers up. But what are we doing with the giant salvinia?
Trying to get rid of it.
We're trying to get rid of it and bring those numbers down as much as possible, because what do we call giant salvinia?
Invasive.
Invasive. So that means, is it good or bad for our ecosystem?
Bad.
Bad. So I really like that thought process there. Good for y'all. Who was that said that? Was it
Aiden.
Aiden? Good. I like that. Ethan, I like your thought process on the plants. Aiden, good work there. Okay. So let's move down. We discussed, or we pulled up the Texas fishing regulations for Caddo Lake. Somebody give me one reason why these regulations are important for us locally.
Our area gets a lot of money from the wildlife industry, so we have to protect it, or our economics around here wouldn't be all too good.
Very good. Bringing money into it. Remember when we talked about FRQs, those extended responses on the AP test? A lot of times they want an economic impact of something. So that's very good to always keep money in your mind. All right, and then somebody give me one thing that happens when people violate fishing regulations.
You can get your license taken away for life.
Yes, good. So on 6 and 7, make sure you go back and add a few more things for each of those questions, but those are some 2 good examples right there. And then we're going to come down and we're going to watch this video. Be thinking about these 2 questions as we're watching it. So what does the young fisherman do wrong, and how much is the fine?
Grammarly does more than catch errors. With Grammarly, you can find real.
Let's take a look at the lobsters real quick. It's a nice lobster. You got a few, did you get any eggers?
I didn't catch any eggers today.
Not today.
Oh, whoops.
Oh, you don't get any clearer than that. I mean, that thing's been notched twice. As I'm going through his lobsters here, I see one that stands out. When a lobsterman catches a female lobster that is bearing eggs, the lobsterman will take a tool that puts a small V on the tail that marks that lobster as a breeder. Anytime that lobster's caught in the future, it has to be released. Yeah, I mean, there's minor V notches and there's obvious V notches.
Yeah, that I would have gone back because I always check for mine.
Yeah, well, it's not would have just tossed back. You have to toss it back. So you didn't toss it back. Once they're on board, you own it. So, and you got it banded and everything. Excuses are what they are, but you also had that previous violation you didn't call us on.
Yeah.
So we're kind of stacking them up here.
Yeah.
I know you're a young guy. Love seeing you out here having a good time with it, but it's lobsters like this that are what make us have a good resource, that we mark the breeders and put them back. So we enforce this pretty strictly. 2 of these and you lose your license for a year. So we're gonna hop on board here. We're gonna pull away from you guys for a minute. We'll pull right back over to you. How old is he? He was born in 2000, so he's 17. He's a part-time commercial lobsterman, younger guy, probably the youngest guy I've seen with a commercial lobster license. He's allowed to sell his lobsters. So for a guy that's allowed to profit off the resource, we hold him to a little bit higher standard. So you're gonna get a violation level summons for possession of a V-notched lobster. It's a $124 fine per lobster. You only had one, so you only getting the 1 ticket. I'll give you that. That being said, I like seeing you out here. I'm not trying to discourage you from coming back out. Keep a closer eye on it. We'll look forward to seeing you again out here. All right, man?
Thank you.
Good meeting you guys. We're gonna let her go, get back to breeding, making more baby lobsters. returning those females to the water is essential. They are the breeders. They are the future of the lobster population here in coastal New Hampshire. Some people can take that for granted, and that's why we hold them accountable for it, and we don't often see that mistake made twice.
Okay. So what did this young fisherman do wrong?
He took a tagged lobster.
Okay, he took one that was V-notched. And what does that V-notch represent on lobsters?
That's a female and it breeds.
Yes, it is a female that breeds. Why would it be so important for them to have regulations on those female lobsters?
To keep the sex ratio equal.
Yes, help with that. What else?
So they can reproduce.
Make them reproduce. If they start taking all the females away, then we won't have as big of a lobster population. It won't keep growing. They used a term at the beginning of the video, and he asked the boy if he had any eggers on board. What do you think that meant?
That they had eggs on.
Yeah. So it was a female that would have had eggs. And so if it did have eggs, he was supposed to put the V-notch in it to let other people know that she was a breeder lobster. And then how much was the fine?
$124.
Yeah, I think it was right at 120 something. I couldn't hardly hear. But it's 120 something per lobster that's notched on boat. So if you catch a bunch, that fine can add up very quickly. Okay. And then we're going to come to this next video. So the questions to be thinking about are, what are the limits per day? How much was the guy over the limit? And how much was his fine? So we're going to watch this one.
I've cried more as an adult driving home from tournaments I bombed than anything else.
Sergeant Adam Cheney and Conservation Officer Chris McKee head to Hooksett Dam to investigate complaints of people fishing over the limit.
There's a guy down below. I see fishing. So. Got tackle box, lawn chair. There's Dad and this little kid. We'll just walk down and check him. Hey, how you doing? It's a bass. Good for the kids. Yeah. Oh, they're always catching. Exactly. The other guy with you down there? No. Okay. You check, guys. You're all set. So. We're all set? Yeah, you're all set. You're on. Good job, bud. How you doing? You having any luck? How long you been out today? Nice. There you go. Are you keeping any of them? No. How many have you caught so far today?
Oh yeah, I got 3.
I'm just checking the fishing license. Do you have your fishing license?
Oh yeah.
Okay, perfect. So what do you have in the cooler?
Food.
Ask him what was in the bucket. He told me it was his food. The bucket is moving, so there's some sort of fish in there, something live inside the bucket. You said you had food in the cooler? How many bass do you have?
Oh, I don't have bass.
These are bass.
This one bass?
These are all bass.
Oh my god, but I don't know.
How many do you have?
I can count.
Okay, you're only allowed to have 5?
5?
You're only allowed to have 5. You have at least 15 or so in here, okay? He's clearly over his limit of bass that he can possess right now, so we're going to take him back up to the vehicle and see how many fish he actually has and have him pick all his equipment up and check him at the vehicle, where it's a little bit safer further away from the water, where we can kind of control the situation. Yeah, I got to call the fish he has. He threw one back when we were there, but what's he got? Every one of them is a smallmouth. So, yeah, he's coming up. If you want to just wait for him, I'm going to go up and just count them. Right now, the limit for smallmouth is 5 per person per day. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So you're 13 fish over the limit right now. All right, I'll be right back with you real quick. We want to make sure people aren't taking over limits. You know, we want to see children down here like they are, and the dad's taking their kids here. If they take all the fish out, there's going to be nothing left for anybody else to have. So yeah, when I asked him what he had in the bucket, he told me it was food. So he said he's got food in there. I said, okay. He caught a bass while I was there. As soon as he caught it, he looked at me and threw it back. So he obviously knows. I'll explain that to him as well. So. All right, so basically, Arjun, you're going to get a ticket for having over a limit of fish, okay? All right, so we're going to let you keep 5 of the fish, okay? Court sets a fine $124 for having an over limit of fish. After that, every fish you possess is a $12.40 fine. So on top of that, so the fines are going to end up being $285.20, okay? You will have your fishing license suspended for a period of 1 year once they find you guilty on that, okay? Do you have any questions for me or anything? Okay, and I'll give you your license back here as well, so I don't keep that on you. And the rest of them, I'm going to get an evidence bag out.
What fish do you want, Arjun? Yeah, you can pick them out. We're getting more and more people that are coming in and starting to catch fish and keep them, as many as they can. It's a resource that is declining, and it's important to be able to preserve and conserve those fish so that they're there for the future.
Okay, so back to our sheet. What was the limit per day on the smallmouth bass?
5.
5. How many was he over?
13.
13, and how much was his fine?
$225.
I thought he said 285 something. Might have been. He was going kind of fast when he started talking about numbers, but it was well over $200. So he had a pretty pricey fine for that. Okay, and then we went on to read. What was this? $285.20. Yes, that's what I thought it said. So his fine was $285.20. Okay, so then yesterday we went on to read that oceans are considered commons, which are resources that we own together as citizens of the world or in a certain nation, state, or community. The Tragedy of the Commons was an essay written by Garrett Hardin explaining how human nature leads to overexploitation without rules and regulations. His study focused on open grazing land. So do we need to play this video again, or was everybody able to catch numbers 11 through 14?
Do you mind showing it?
I will show it again for sure.
Imagine as a thought experiment that you live in a small village and depend on the local fish pond for food. You share the pond with 3 other villagers. The pond starts off with a dozen fish, and the fish reproduce. For every 2 fish, there will be 1 baby added each night. So in order to maximize your supply of food, how many fish should you catch each day? Take a moment to think about it. Assume baby fish grow to full size immediately and that the pond begins at full capacity, and ignore factors like the sex of the fish you catch. The answer? 1. And it's not just you. The best way to maximize every villager's food supply is for each fisherman to take just 1 fish each day. Here's how the math works. If each villager takes 1 fish, there will be 8 fish left overnight. Each pair of fish produces 1 baby, and the next day, the pond will be fully restocked with 12 fish. If anyone takes more than 1, the number of reproductive pairs drops, and the population won't be able to bounce back. Eventually, the fish in the lake will be gone, leaving all 4 villagers to starve. This fish pond is just one example of a classic problem called the Tragedy of the Commons. The phenomenon was first described in a pamphlet by economist William Forster Lloyd in 1833 in a discussion of the overgrazing of cattle on village common areas. More than 100 years later, ecologist Garrett Hardin revived the concept to describe what happens when many individuals all share a limited resource, like grazing land, fishing areas, living space, even clean air. Hardin argued that these situations pit short-term self-interest against the common good, and they end badly for everyone, resulting in overgrazing, overfishing, overpopulation, pollution, and other social and environmental problems. The key feature of a tragedy of the commons is that it provides an opportunity for an individual to benefit him or herself while spreading out any negative effects across the larger population. To see what that means, let's revisit our fish pond. Each individual fisherman is motivated to take as many fish as he can for himself. Meanwhile, any decline in fish reproduction is shared by the entire village. Anxious to avoid losing out to his neighbors, a fisherman will conclude that it's in his best interest to take an extra fish, or 2, or 3. Unfortunately, this is the same conclusion reached by the other fishermen, and that's the tragedy. Optimizing for the self in the short term isn't optimal for anyone in the long term. That's a simplified example, but the tragedy of the commons plays out in the more complex systems of real life too. The overuse of antibiotics has led to short-term gains in livestock production and in treating common illnesses. But it's also resulted in the evolution of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which threaten the entire population. A coal-fired power plant produces cheap electricity for its customers and profits for its owners. These local benefits are helpful in the short term. But pollution from mining and burning coal is spread across the entire atmosphere and sticks around for thousands of years. There are other examples too. Littering, water shortages, deforestation, traffic jams, even the purchase of bottled water. But human civilization has proven it's capable of doing something remarkable. We form social contracts, we make communal agreements, we elect governments, and we pass laws. All this to save our collective selves from our own individual impulses. It isn't easy, and we certainly don't get it right nearly all of the time. But humans, at our best, have shown that we can solve these problems, and we can continue to do so if we remember Hardin's lesson. When the tragedy of the commons applies, what's good for all of us is good for each of us. TED Ed is a nonprofit.
So what were the first commons discussed as being overused? Anybody?
It was the pond or the grazing land.
The grazing land is the one that they first talked about in Great Britain. So it was the grazing land for the cattle. All right, and then what happens when an individual puts their well-being over the common good? What are the results?
On the long term, it affects them and the people around them.
Okay, good. So when an individual puts their well-being over the common good, it profits them in the beginning, but then in the long run, it harms everybody and eventually themselves too. 13, how has the overuse of antibiotics by the meat industry affected all of us?
It is putting bacteria into our body.
Maybe not bacteria into our body, but what does it cause the bacteria to do? Said the bacteria evolved. And how did it evolve? Why is it bad now? Or certain types of it, why are they bad now? Anybody catch that part? Let's see if we can find it. Here we go.
Antibiotics has led to short-term gains in livestock production and in treating common illnesses. But it's also resulted in the evolution of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which threaten the entire population. A coal-fired power plant.
Okay, so how did the bacteria evolve?
It evolved to resist against.
Yes. So it has caused certain types of bacteria to be what they call antibiotic resistant. And they call these antibiotic-resistant bacteria almost like super bacteria, because when you get an infection caused by this bacteria, none of our normal antibiotics work to kill it. So it's really, really hard to treat those illnesses because we don't really have medicines that can kill that bacteria for us. So it causes a big problem. Okay, and then number 14, how have humans solved some of these problems? So what are some things that we have done to help kind of counteract these problems?
The video said make laws.
Yes, we have made laws. Anything else? Do we have any maybe government agencies that help solve these problems?
Yes, ma'am.
Like what? We watched the videos about the lobster fisherman and the guy with the bass. Who was enforcing those laws?
The
Game warden.
Parks organization.
Yes, so we have wildlife and fisheries agents. Those are kind of government agencies that help to enforce our laws, but they also go out and do a lot of research and things to better our laws and better the situation for us. Any other things you can think of? Okay, if you think of anything else there, make sure you put it on number 14. And then finally, the most important part, evaluate. Summarize the tragedy of the commons and the solution in 2 to 3 complex sentences. So this is where I'm not going to help you out with this part. I want to see what you have gathered from this, what you know. So what does the tragedy of the concept mean? And what is the solution? What do we need to do to combat this problem? So with that being said, I will leave y'all to finish the rest of this worksheet on your own. Does anybody have any questions before we log off?
No, ma'am.
All right. Make sure we get these submitted as soon as possible. Remember that assignments for this week will lock Sunday at midnight. So make sure that if you have anything from this week that hasn't been done, that we get those completed by Sunday at midnight. And y'all have a great weekend. I will see you on Monday.
You too.
Bye, guys.
Bye.